So, welcome to the Lucidus podcast. Thank you so much, Brett, for coming on today.
Thanks,
You're,
Shelly.
yes, you're another one of my guests who has come on to answer 3 questions that you do not know.
It's true. I don't know.
You don't know. So, I just want to start by sort of placing you on the earth. Can you tell me if, when you look out your nearest window, what do you see, both near and far?
Well, of course, I'm in my little home studio here, so I don't actually have
A window.
my window is covered, so I can't see out it. But if I were to open the blinds, I'd see my backyard.
And what does that look like? So, what are some of the things out there that we don't?
Well, it's mostly green, despite all of the heat here in Salt Lake City. But it's right outside the window is a redbud tree that's 22 years old and still alive, and a little fountain for the goldfinches and other small birds that populate the area and come and get drinks. And then there's a brick pathway that leads up to our back deck.
Lovely. Well, and I have been lucky enough to be in that backyard and to sing with you and your lovely wife, Stacey, on that deck. So many fond memories of that yard and that deck.
Us too.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Anything else you want to say or share before I ask the first question?
No.
You ready? Okay. Here is your first question. What did I learn way too late?
I don't think I've learned anything way too late. I think I've learned things that as I'm ready to learn them. And fortunately, the way I look at the process of my life and learning is staying curious and being open to whatever experience transpires. If I have resistance to anything that comes up, I always am curious about that. So I'll question whether or not something that's come up that I'm resisting really needs more investigation or examining why I have resistance to it, or just what I can get out of the experience.
Yeah, I like. Well, I do think that's true. That we can only learn things in the time that we can. So, if I tweak that a little bit, is there something that took you a long time to learn, or longer
Well,
than you?
yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, I regard the process as it's ongoing and a kind of a continuum. So I don't think I, even though I had opportunities to learn a lot of the things that I'm continually learning, and a lot of it is redundant and repetitive because we often think, and I often think that I've figured that one out. I've learned my lesson and I can move on. And then shortly down the road, I'll get my ass kicked and find out it's like, oh, I really wasn't done with it. So the process is, I think that we continually are learning a lot of times the same lessons over and over again. And some of them they're just lifelong, and we're never going to completely figure everything out. So I just recognize, like, well, this is the moment, this is the experience of the moment, and I really just try to stay open to the process of I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I say that often is that I feel like learning cycles are cyclical, and I often say they're spiral, meaning you come around to learn the same lesson, but you're actually kind of at a deeper level. Does that resonate with you at all?
Sometimes on some things, yeah, and then other things, as I've said, I think that the process of learning a lesson is it's sometimes it's over and over again, maybe in different context, but ultimately the lesson is just like you continue to learn it. So I don't think there's an end to that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's easy to go to the second question, which is what am I learning now?
I'm now learning that my continual process of exploring patience or lack of patience is this, like, just when I think I'm patient, I find out, well, I'm not as patient as I thought, and so I'm learning patience all of the time.
And okay, would you say the patience that you need is more with yourself or others or equal?
I think the lesson of learning patience really is about my direct experience with myself and with other people. So I don't really find a separation of the idea that I'm impatient with other people any more than I'm impatient with myself, or vice versa. It really is, it's kind of the same thing. And so if I find that I'm working on patience on myself, that seems to be reflected in how I'm dealing with other people as well.
Yeah. I like that. I like that distinction you make. I think I've I think I've thought that I'm more patient with other people and less patient with myself.
Hmm.
But when you said that, it made me wonder if maybe that distinction isn't actually correct. That maybe the impatience is kind of a simultaneous with both of us. So
Yeah, I think that lends itself to the idea that there's no black and white, really. I mean, it's many shades of and colors of gray and everything else. So it's so I don't think there really is as much of a separation between us and other people as we think that there is.
I have a question, and I don't know the answer for myself, what I'm about to ask, but do you feel like there's kind of like a core reason for your impatience? Or like do they all come? I wondered if when I'm impatient with myself or with others, if yeah, if there's like a if like if the impatience all led down to one thing where
Mm. I think that's a good question. I think that's a good question to ask ourselves. Is there something that we can distill or tease apart, that we can find the genesis of whatever we're trying to learn about ourselves, or other people for that matter? It's what what really is the what's the beginning of that? And I don't think there really is an answer to that. I mean, I think we can continue to say, as I look at my history, that, oh, it was this instance or that instance, or the combination of things that became who I am. Because the reality is, I believe anyway, that we're there's a form of determinism that I think that we live in, and in that we're genetically, we're made up of a combination of our parents, our grandparents, and so on ad infinitum. I mean, down to the beginning of all life on Earth. So we have that makes us who we are, and we also have the upbringing that we had with our families, and those influence uh, how we learn to behave and interact with the world. And then from that point on, it's really like trying to decide, is this who I am? That question of
Mhm.
what am I, who am I, is, I think, always a, a very deep question. And it's I think it's really important to continue to stay curious about that, and continue to ask that question: who am I, and what do I think I am, and why do I think that? So a lot of our belief systems, I think, really are based on not necessarily who we are, but as much as uh, how we were raised and how we interact or don't want to interact with our world and other people. So I think that there isn't a solid answer to that, other than so much of who we are is our genetics and how we were raised, and the rest of it is like we just get to continually figure it out along our lifeline. So, uh, and I don't think there's any conclusion to that there's a there.
Yeah. I haven't thought about this until as you've been speaking, and that is how much or how many times learning actually requires us to unlearn.
Mm,
Because you were talking about like sort of the ancestral lineage, and there are a lot of things that have been handed down, and sometimes the learning is sort of unlearning those habits. Um,
yeah,
you know,
I agree. Yeah, and the what are belief systems? I mean, I think that's a good question, and how do they influence what we choose to do or choose not to do? And I think those are always great things to examine. It's like we all have belief systems about who we are, who other people are, what our world is, and we are constantly trying to figure that out. And that's part of just, I think, being a human being, is that we like to tease apart puzzles,
mm,
and as though there is really some solid solution to it. And I don't think there is. I think it's we're just making our way as best we can through our lives and trying to be better human beings, hopefully. And I think that ultimately that's the main thing that we can aspire, is to be better people, be kinder to other people, and try to be better people and try to make a better world.
yeah, you remind me two things that you just reminded me of, and one is I'm always looking for the solution, like the magic key.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think I think we're kind of pre-programmed to do that, because just I think our evolution as human beings is that how we became uh, so good at surviving is that we keep trying to tease apart the puzzle. And we do find answers in that. There are answers within that, but there isn't like an ultimate answer, I don't think.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the second thing you reminded me of when you were talking about like kind of being the best person you can be. And
Mm.
Ram Dass has a great quote where he says, "We are all children walking each other home."
Hmm.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, and I like that. I like that, particularly when I feel alone. I think that's a nice thing to remember, is that we're really not. We are and we aren't.
Hmm.
We have each other, and I think that's an important thing to have in your life, is we're social beings, and people don't do well living in caves as hermits.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, anything you want to say about these two before I ask you the third and final question?
I feel pretty complete on
Okay. All right. When I pass onward, what do I hope is my final thought?
that. Oh, I hope whoever is with me isn't put out by my dying.
Okay, but that wasn't the question. What is the final thought that you hope to have in your head? Oh, is the final thought you hope to have?
Well, I
This.
think that's realistic of me, is because oftentimes I'm over concerned about how comfortable everybody else is around me, rather than, I've been kind of born and raised as a fixer.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a large part of my personality, and that probably won't ever go away. It's just I just get to be more aware of it. And so oftentimes what's in my brain when I'm around people is, how can I make everybody else more comfortable?
Okay. So, but is that what you hope is your final thought?
I don't subscribe to hope. I really am not a hopeful person. I really just try to stay open to whatever experience comes up, and my reactions to that aren't always what I want them to be, but I don't hope for anything really.
So
I
tell me your relationship with hope. What is
I
what
try not to have a relationship with hope. I don't believe
and
there's. I think that's a thing that human beings invented as a way of as a coping mechanism for struggling with being where people are in the moment of their experience. And so I think what works for me is just continuing to explore being where I am in the moment without hoping that something else is going to be different.
And if I use the word want, would that change at all? Like what I want my final thought to be? Would that doesn't really
You
change
know,
it?
to qualify that, yeah, I think we all have, we all want things. We want things to be a certain way, and
Mm,
it's. I think it's good to recognize that we have expectations about our preferences, and our preferences are, I think, just part of being a human being. You know, we like things and we don't like things. We're attracted to things. We're repelled by things, and I think continue to explore that and just say, what is it? What is this?
mm,
How do I feel about it? What's going on with me right now with my feeling about my preference? And so I think in that regard, I try not to have a great attachment to either wanting or not wanting or being repelled or attracted to things, except to just acknowledge them as just like, oh, I have this feeling about this particular thing right now. And it's just this is just part of my experience, and it's part of being in this moment. And I'm I can be content with the exploration, and maybe
mm,
even if I'm unhappy or dissatisfied with something, I can still recognize that, oh, that's just part of this experience at this particular moment. And I don't have to have an attachment to it. So I try not to have a large attachment to wanting or hope or expectation. So to me, it's like, I I don't really hope things are going to be a certain way. My idea of what's after this is it. I have no idea. I don't think anybody does. I think we want to know, but I don't know what that experience is going to be.
okay. I love the words you said, content with the exploration.
Mm.
I mean, I think that's like the distillation of this whole process.
Hmm.
If you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
connect with it.
I agree with that.
Mhm. I really like that. Okay, so anything else you want to share? You feel good with that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that I have anything more to add. I think we've actually dialed in and what my ideas about life, the universe, and everything are. So
You have.
the basic basis of it is I don't know.
Which is funny because I don't know if you've heard, but I literally have a podcast called I Don't Know.
Oh,
In the last,
I don't think I've listened to that one.
yeah, so in the last, I would say 6 months, that has kind of been
Oh,
the mantra that's been coming from inside of me is something has been guiding me to say the words and understand that I don't know. I don't know.
yeah.
It's powerful.
It really is. I think it's probably the most honest thing that we can say about most of our experiences is that, wow, this is a weird experience, and I don't know. I don't know what it means.
Hmm.
And I do think that's a great place to start from, wherever we're beginning and however we're continuing, is to recognize, like, we may think we know, and I don't think we do.
I for sure don't know. Um, okay, so there's one last surprise question,
Okay.
but this is the one you get to ask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so is there a question that you think would be interesting to ask other people? Like if you were going to host this and you were going to ask people a question, what do you think you'd ask?
I think that's a good question.
Oh,
Um, because
that's
that's
my
not,
best question.
well, this is funny because I do think about, when I get together with people, oftentimes I think mm, my probably my most interesting experience is when it's a one-on-one conversation rather than in a group, and
Mhm.
because I don't do well in group discussion. So so I really, when I talk to people, I really just try to get them to tell me about themselves and tell me what their what their exploration of their life is and where they're at. So I don't have any like specific questions for people about What do you do for a living?
Mm.
Who are you really? Where do you come from? Because those are, our genetics again and our upbringing. It's like we have absolutely no control over those things. And so the thing that I think is interesting is getting other people's take on that experience. It's like if you recognize that, yeah, I guess that would be my question to people is if they can recognize that who and what they are is so much based on their genetics, which they have no control over, their upbringing, which they had probably no control over, and really all we have is the decisions that we make from this moment on. How is that? How do people react to that? How do people perceive that? And how do people want to explore that, or do they, or is that antithetical to their life or their experience?
Hmm.
Is that enough gobbledygook?
No, no, that was good. I was actually wondering if I was gonna, I mean, it's not, it's really kind of a question that can't be answered, but I was like, I wonder how many people would or could answer that.
Yeah, yeah. I think again that there isn't a right or wrong answer to any of that. It's really just
Mm.
it's just like it's a thinker to explore. It's like when you consider we're here in this moment because of everything that went before us, and we're having this conversation here because of everything that went before us. And what does that feel like that we're on the apex of everything that came before us? And now I mean everything. We wouldn't be having this conversation if the very small living particles that first emerged from the oceans in billions of years ago. If that didn't happen, well, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So
Well, and in a in a much more practical sense, we would not be having this conversation if you did not have a dog
that's
named Shelly
right.
and we did not hike the same trail.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So do you want to mention just quickly how we met?
Yeah. So,
Just
and
so
I think this is a good example of uh, just concurrence of events. I'm not a big believer in serendipity because or uh, that things are meant to be. It's just like there are these co-concurrences that occur, and sometimes amazing things happen out of those. And one of those is that my wife Stacey and I were walking our dog Shelly hiking in on Bowman Trail in Mill Creek Canyon, and we happened to pass you and say hi, and then I called out to Shelly to settle down because she was being a little bit of a pest around you, and you thought I was talking to you. And then we talked a little bit more and found out we had some fun things in common, like we liked to sing and perform, and we started getting together and doing that. And so that's been a really lovely relationship that's developed.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of I don't know.
Mm.
Just me standing on the trail in that moment and being like, I don't really know these people and I don't
Mm.
really understand what's happening. Um, but just sort of being like, that's okay. Like just oh, I don't need to know
Mm.
all that's happening in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So what may I ask you that question is like kind of the continuation of that experience of I don't know, and yet you were willing to explore expanding that interaction, and actually getting to know us.
I would say because it can be so scary for me
Mm.
to meet new people and step into new situations, and I sort of have this pretty strong need to feel safe because I first met Stacey in the park,
Mm.
um, and was able to just we just sat and sing while she played her ukulele, and it was all, it takes me, I didn't know, but it was the next step felt safe. Um,
Mm,
so I was willing to not know, taking small steps. Yeah. But, and I would say I do better in life when I don't know. And that's
mm.
an interesting reflection for me to realize when I'm sure I know, I'm usually wrong. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and I concur. I think that's where I do best also is if I don't go along with a preconceived idea or let that run me. That I think that's largely a part of who we are is that we're storytellers and we tell ourselves stories, we tell other people our stories, and we have these ideas about the stories and what they mean, and sometimes that gets overly complex and kind of derails us from the the actual moment of what you're experiencing. So I just try to always recognize is like I tell myself stories, and so and just let myself be okay about that, and just say, "Oh, I have a story about this,"
Mm,
and then recognize it's like, but I really don't know. I really don't know. But we do have stories, and they sometimes they're very convincing.
yeah. And it's interesting too to for me as I, as I kind of see my narratives play through, I I feel like I'm getting to a place where I'm like, yes, that was true, but that doesn't mean it's always true. I feel like I'm
Hmm.
trying to rewrite the story, not by sort of discounting or erasing the current narrative I have or past narratives, but just saying, yes, that was true, but
Mhm.
that is not an eternal truth.
Mm.
I don't know if that resonates in any way. So,
Yeah, I think truth is one of those things that is has a lot of fluidity, um, and it's oftentimes contextual. So I think again it comes back to that. I don't think it's black and white. It's like there's a certain amount of truth to a lot of things that isn't necessarily completely true. So
mm.
I think
Well,
that's it's always important to explore that.
yeah, I love what you just said. Truth is contextual.
Mm,
Um, I 100%. And I think that's something I'm actually trying to learn right now.
mm,
Is that just because something's true in one context or situation doesn't mean it's going to be true in another one.
mm.
And I can sometimes see so black and white that I think it should be. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think we want the world to be consistent
Hmm.
and solid
Hmm.
and very understandable and very supportive. And most of the time, none of those things is true,
Or it doesn't feel true.
or it doesn't feel true. And maybe it isn't matter of being true or false as much as it is it's just not reality.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Well, it's been an absolute delight to have you.
thank
And
you.
I've appreciated and learned a lot. I knew I would. So thank you so much. Is there anything that you just want to touch upon or share? Anything else that feels like it's.
I have very much enjoyed talking with you today and having you grill me about life, the universe, and everything. And I'm always happy to pontificate about said belief systems. I don't necessarily believe any of them, but
Well, and I think that's interesting because it is interesting to speak with someone who
mm,
has this sort of, uh, who has the take that you have on life.
mm,
It definitely shows me the areas that where I'm attached
mm,
even to that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The one thing that one of the things that I guess I could actually follow up on from the first question is that often this has been the case that I act like I know what I'm doing and I act like I know the answer. And I've done that all of my life. And that's exactly what it is. It's an act. So recognizing that that's how I operate so that I'm perceived as a person somebody can talk to or be around or like. It's, it's just a face.
So do most of the time when you're acting, do you kind of know it? You kind of know like I am acting like I know what I'm doing and everything's under control. Like you sort of are aware of that inside?
Some of the time, I mean, a lot of the time I'm caught up in the act. So,
Oh.
you know, it's like, oh, I believe the situation and I believe my part in it, so, so then I have to recognize somewhere down the road as I'm in the middle of uh, act two, scene three, that, that I'm a player and I'm just playing a part and just like everybody else. And I'm doing my best to muddle through without having my script in my hands anymore.
Yeah. Where is my
Yeah,
script?
maybe it's under the chair.
Where'd it go? So, well, it's been a delight. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And maybe you and I and Stacey will make music on the podcast one day. That would be fun.
We would love that. And Stacey says hi.
Okay, we'll film on the back deck. That would be really beautiful.
That'd be great. We'd love that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Shelly.
Bye bye.